Welcome to the Lady NightHawk show, where we talk about interesting topics. And tonight I have my co-host guest with me, and you know him, and I'm gonna let him introduce himself.
Oh, good evening. My name is Donald Bell. I am happy to be back here with you this evening. And, you know, I'm an attorney. I'm here in Maryland, specifically here in Prince George's County. I have an office in Greenbelt. I've been in Greenbelt for the last 15 years. I've been here in Prince George's County for the last 20, almost 21 years. This year makes 21 years. This month makes 21 years. And again, I'm very happy to be here, and thank you for inviting me back.
And I mean, it's always good because at least you know what's going on in the courts.
Yeah.
And you can keep me on track sometimes, you know. So I'm always a pleasure. And my viewers are very happy when you come as well, because they know that they can get some vital information that's out there, and it's from a reputable legal source. And I want you to tell them, it's in the credits, but if you could just tell them so that they can have your office phone number and your address.
Yeah, so I'm in Greenbelt. So I'm on Ivy Lane, 6305 Ivy Lane, Suite 315 in Greenbelt, right off of the Beltway, right off of Kenilworth Avenue. So I'm right there, right across the street from the federal courthouse. So again, I've been there for about 15 years. Again, I'm happy to help anyone out that needs my help. You can call my office 301-614-0535, and I'll be happy to talk to you. One of my staff members will be happy to get your information, so we can talk about your issues as it relates to your financial well-being and whatnot, which is one of the reasons why I'm here this evening. So.
Yeah, and right now it's kind of hard because you got all those people that got laid off in the federal government and laid off in private industry as well. And one thing that, like I told you with TV channels I watch, and I also watched Bloomberg. Whoever would have thought that I would have been watching the.
Well, I listen to Bloomberg
channel
every day.
Yeah, I'm talking about me, you know.
I don't watch TV a lot, but you know, I'm in the car a lot, traveling back and forth to court.
Yeah.
So I listen to Bloomberg every day. So I find it very interesting.
Yeah, I do.
The information that they provide and whatnot.
So far as the stocks and things are concerned.
Well, not only that, but they just provide like a lot of information, and they give it to you from a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's from a financial perspective.
Yes.
You know, so I enjoy listening to Bloomberg.
Yeah, and I enjoy watching it because it is from a financial perspective. And
but I think what you're watching is the same thing I'm listening to on the radio, because they said that you know they're on TV as well. So.
Yeah, they're on there at nighttime. Once again, they're a nighttime show in early morning.
Yeah.
But I've learned a lot about stocks, you know, listening to them in the financial business world that we live in, which we all did not. Depending on where you were and and what you were interested in doing in life, you were not taught how to get stocks. And I know that when I worked in a doctor's office, my doctor that I worked for, I was an office manager years ago. He told us then that we needed to invest in penny stock.
Okay.
And that was the best advice that he could have ever given us. But you didn't know what penny stock was, you know. But he did encourage us to, at a very young age, to get the penny stocks, because those are the cheapest ones that we could get, and they're utilities, and they're probably the safest ones that you can get. But I mean, you're still young, you know. So you're telling me to do this. Are you going to send me somewhere? You know, you didn't even know the questions to ask. You know what I mean? Now you get older, you wish you had paid attention. And invested in some of those things, because usually where you work, one thing that they also told us too is that to make sure that we always, if a company is offering you to take out money for your wherever they have, you know,
401k or something,
you know, whatever, to make sure that you take part of that investment. They say even if you do 1%, 1% is better than nothing at all, you know. But I
offer a 401k to my employees as an incentive. When you have good people working for you, you want to try to keep them, and you want to be competitive. But you know, I offer a 401k, and I offer, you know, to contribute a percentage to their 401k, and then I match a percentage of their 401k. But in terms of investment, investment advice, if you're just starting out, I think somebody that you can really go and follow is like Warren Buffett, because he always gives very down to earth, very simple advice. Like one of the things that he would always say, I follow and I've read a lot of what he talks about. He always talks about not investing in anything that you don't understand.
Right.
So if it's so complicated that you can't sit down and you can't talk about it and just plain English in terms of what this company is doing, don't invest in it. Like let's just say Coca-Cola. You know what Coca-Cola is, you know what they sell, if you want to invest in something like that, or Pepsi or something, I mean, that's fine. But if a company is doing something so complicated and so out of the norm that you can't understand it, maybe, I mean, when you're starting out,
right,
don't mess with that.
Right, and that's actually too, that's why they told us the penny stocks, because utilities, you watch those, you pay every day.
Yeah. But you can understand what a utility company does. Yeah. Now, when they're doing, when they start doing like things that you don't understand what's going on,
then time to get some advice.
Yeah, or maybe stay away from that until you know exactly what's going on with something like that.
Oh, okay.
But I think from when it comes to financial well-being, you always got to sort of have a plan. And we've talked about this before. You've talked about like this before. So I think the first thing that you got to do is you got to have a budget. Okay, you got to know what's coming in, what's going out, and hopefully you got more coming in than what's going out. And if you got more going out than what's coming in, then you need to balance that budget, and because you can't save anything, you can't invest anything if you're spending more than what's coming in. And then you need to pay off or pay down your bills to get those. I mean, your like your credit cards and things like that will take up your disposable income. And then, part of that budget is you got to watch everything that you spend. So go back and look at those bank statements. Look at how many times you're going to McDonald's. Look at how many times you're going to Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, because you were talking about your friend. Yeah.
Yeah, let's look at that. When people come to me and they're having financial issues, these are some of the things that we're sort of doing. My staff is sort of looking at, like, how many times are you eating out a month? You put down, you're only spending $400 a month on food, but, we look at how many times you're going to McDonald's, you're going through the drive-through. Those $5 and those $10, even though those extra VAT, they add up. Maybe this is the reason why you don't have any money left over and you can't invest, because, your money is going to those type of things. Well, I'm not saying,
I don't have stock in McDonald's, but I'm just saying to one of those places, wherever it is that you go.
Wherever it is. It could be cigarettes.
What's the name? Yeah, and that other place that people do coffee all the time. I don't have no stock.
Starbucks.
In it. Yeah, we don't have no stock in that either. But it's just a habit. They become.
And I'm not saying you got to cut it out.
Yeah.
But maybe we got to cut it back some, because this is how we are going to develop a situation where you have money to sort of start putting away. And then before you start investing, you need to have an emergency fund. Okay? You need to be able to be in a situation whereas if you're working and you lose your job, you got 3 months, maybe 6 months worth of money put away. So you can pay your bills.
Well, I guess those people that working for the federal government that got fired, that's been working with them forever and ever, then you don't even know if they got their benefits that they were paying into. You just don't know,
Yeah. But you got to be prepared for stuff like this.
Yeah. So. Well, if you feel like you've been, like I said, those people, some of them been working for almost 70 years, okay, or 50, 60 years, and maybe they weren't taught, but they did take out the 401k. You understand what I'm saying? So, or whatever that company that they were in offered it, okay, thank God for that, because that way they do have some financial, if they were able to regroup it. Now that I don't know, because another big story was on there, it was about that the people that were in that were actually independently owned, that weren't a part of the federal government. It was the peace building, I forgot what the whole name of it is, but anyway, that they confiscated and took $5 million from them, you know, out of there. They took their money. They're trying to get their money back. Federal judge actually, the Supreme Court justice actually went along with, the federal government had no business going in there shutting down their stuff and taking their stuff and doing the financing, because it was like a world peace organization and they were privately owned.
You may be talking about the U.S. aid.
That's the one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was a governmental agency that dispersed aid out to foreign
peace. This one was about peace.
To foreign governments and things of that nature.
Well, this one was about whatever it was. This big building. It was privately owned.
Okay.
The board was a privately board that they tried to, Musk and them tried to go in there and they took out, and they said that when they took it, they took everything, they destroyed everything that they had ever used, and they left the bill unsecure. And when the Supreme Court justice said that it was illegal and they owed them everything that they took from them, that when they went back into the building, that it was roaches and rats and torn paper, marijuana. They had, you know, whatever those kids do, tag the walls and stuff, that the inside of the building was so destroyed that they did it. I mean, that was just mean. Okay.
Yeah, I don't quite know what you're referring to, but what I was talking about was U.S. aid, which was funded by the federal government. It was created by Congress.
No.
And Doge had come in and it was shut down by executive order. And there is litigation going on as to whether or not, you know, the president has the ability to shut down a program or shut down an agency that was created by Congress. Because typically if something created by Congress can only be shut down by Congress. Mm-hmm. So he may have the ability to go to Congress and say, hey, I'm not going to give them any more money.
Yep, they took their money away. So it must have been Congress.
Yeah, or I'm not going to allocate the money that I'm not going to give them the money that you allocated. Mm-hmm. But, you know, there's litigation going on as to whether or not he has the ability, the president, the executive, the chief executive has the ability to shut it down without you know,
going to Congress.
Without going to Congress. Now we know Congress has the ability to shut them down. Mm-hmm. And the same sort of arguments are going on about a lot of like federal agencies and things like that, like the Department of Education and things like that. Does the president or the chief executive have the authority to shut it down when it was created by Congress?
Right.
So if he creates something, if the chief executive, whether it was this president or a previous president, if he creates like some sort of organization, then obviously he may have the authority to shut it down. Mm-hmm. But if he didn't create it, or if the chief executive didn't create it, then there is, you know, there is you know, litigation. There's a thought that if you didn't create it, then you can't shut it down.
Now, this is a totally different organization because this one was privately owned. It wasn't part of the federal government. It was privately owned. They had their own board. They got financing from different organizations. They did get some money from Congress, I think.
Okay.
But they had a big building down there that they were going to actually take that building. They took the building over, but they were going to actually, this administration was actually going to use it. Cannot think of what it is, but it had something to do with peace. The United States something. The acronym it stood for it was a privately owned. That's why the Supreme Court said that it had nothing to do with anything that was done to them. That was totally illegal because it was a privately funded organization. So I'm believing that they got grants. And they had $5 million, okay, and they took the money. And so they have to return the money because it had nothing to do with the federal government. I don't even think it had anything to do with Congress. I think this was it's a big building, whatever it is. I'm gonna tell you when I get home because I have it in my phone, so I can tell you when I get through the name of the agency because I take pictures of certain things that I try to keep. And I meant to put it in my lap so when I talked about it, I know I had the right one because there was so many buildings that were taken over, and so many agencies that were taken over. I just don't remember. Some of them have the same acronym and some close to it, you know. But this one, I know that it was a black guy. That they had the police. They had the. I remember when it actually happened. It was a black guy that was a chairman of the board, and they came in, and the security had their own private security company. And when the people came in there to try to get them out, the security people tried to call the police. The police, you know, have to do with what the government, the president says, or, you know, whoever the person, Musk and them say. So they allowed him to go into that building and told the employees that they had to pack up their stuff and get out.
That was the USA building, and that was
okay.
And that was a federally funded government program.
They said it was not federally funded. They said that's why they had not a right.
Well,
the Supreme Court Judge said that they had no right because they was not a federally funded organization. This organization I'm talking about. They was not federally funded. They had no business taking their money. That was an illegal thing that he did. And then I had any rights in going into that building and taking anything and doing anything.
Yeah, I don't know what you.
I'll show it to you when I finish. But I saw it when it happened, and then when it came back, and the federal judge came back. That's what her ruling was. They had no right because they was not a federally funded program.
I don't know if it was a Supreme Court justice because generally they rule sort of together, so they don't sit individually in cases. No,
well, this was a repeal. Okay.
Yeah, but the Supreme Court doesn't. The justices don't sit individually on cases. They rule, and there has to be like some sort of majority rule. So it's not just like one who will just rule on something.
No, it wasn't one person. It was they had to have 9 votes. They had to get 8 out of 9 votes.
Yeah. And
they got 8 votes. It was only one person that did not.
Okay. Well, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. I mean, like I said, I watch all these different shows and I watch all these different things. Right now I can't think of what the name of it was, but I know that ruling came out last week. So whoever was a federal judge or Supreme Judge, that they voted against what they did was totally illegal. It was wrong, and they need to. And then they were talking about the disgusting way that the building was left and all the documents and history that they had done. I thought that was a disgrace because they talked about over 40 years of information that was destroyed in that building. And the way they left it unsecured, I just thought that was really, really mean. I really do. Because if you're doing research and you try to keep world peace and things like that, you understand what I'm saying, and trying to make sure that people are fed in different countries and stuff like that, and you're not letting it happen, then I think that they said it was. I'm not even going to say the number because when we come back the next time, me and Attorney Bill come on next time, I'm gonna have that information, so I have the right.
I'm not aware of
the right information. So that when I come back, we come back, we can because you might be right, that was what it was, but I'm quite sure that what I heard was that they was not federally funded, and that's why I was ruled against them, because it was not federally. It was not a federally funded building. They had no business in the building, and the guy was trying to tell them when they were coming there, this is not part of the federal government. So I don't know. If you know what I'm talking about, text me at Lady NightHawk show at gmail.com. Yeah. Anyway, so the other thing was that I heard looking at Bloomberg was that about the interest rate. So you listen to that all the time about these people that have lost their jobs. I don't know how much the information or what the information says on the radio, but they were talking about all these people that have lost their jobs in the housing market, that a lot of them don't know what to do because they might have a 0.3 something interest rate, and they don't know whether or not to go in and buy another house because the interest rate is like at 7% right now. So they don't know what to do.
I mean, this is something that that we've been dealing with, particularly in this area, during COVID, right before COVID, and during COVID, interest rates were dropped at an all-time low. Primarily, and the primary reason why was because banks were able to borrow money at near 0% interest from the federal government. So it's basically, that's what banks do. They borrow money from the government, they lend it out to you. Okay, that's where the banks get the money from. They borrow it from the federal government. So if you can borrow money at 0% interest and then you can loan it out at 3% interest or 4% interest, you're going to make money off of it. Okay, well, after COVID, as inflation hit, the price to borrow money went up. Okay, so now the banks are having to borrow money at 4% interest from the federal government. So they're loaning it out to you at 7% interest. That's how they make their money. Mm-hmm. So people who were able to refinance, were lucky enough to refinance during COVID, they were able to refinance and get lower rates. So what that caused was a stagnation in the housing market, because why am I going to move even though I can get a bigger house, or maybe I want a smaller house. Maybe I'm older and I want a smaller house, mm-hmm. but I got a 3% interest rate. Okay, interest rates had never been that low. I mean, throughout the history of this country, they've never been that low. So why am I going to move and pay 7% interest on a new loan when I can keep my house and pay 3%? Mm-hmm. So what that does, that sort of causes is sort of a bubble in the market, where you got people who are looking for houses, maybe particularly like in the Washington, D.C. area, because every 2 years there's an election. And then every 4 years, there's a presidential election. So you have people constantly coming into this market. But what you have is a situation where people are just like, I'm not selling my house because I have this nice house here in Bowie and my interest rate is 3%. So why am I going to sell my house and go and buy another house and pay 7%? So I'm going to pay double the interest. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to have to pay more for it. So what happened is there are a lot of people who are looking for houses, but not that many people are selling. So the prices of the houses that are on the market are starting to go up. So what you're seeing right now is the interest rates haven't fallen much, okay? So it's harder for people to buy houses. So there are probably more houses that are coming on the market because maybe some people have lost their jobs. And they're gonna, they want to sell and they want to move out of the area. But it's harder for people to qualify for those loans, because the price of the houses are at an all-time high. Like here in Bowie, the prices of houses are at an all-time high. But, the interest rates are so high. Mm-hmm. You gotta pay 7%. So a house that probably would have sold for $400,000 at 3 or 4% interest in 21 or 22 is now selling for $500,000 at 7%. So people can't afford. So some people, it prices some people out of the market, mm-hmm. Or there may be people who can afford it, but they're like, I'm not paying, I'm not going to pay 7%. I'm not going to pay, I'm not going to pay double or triple, what I would have had to pay in 20 or 21 or 20 or 21. So, a lot of people are just sort of staying where they're at. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of the issue that you have. So you have like, so last year you had very little inventory on the market, mm-hmm. And there were bidding wars on the houses. Mm-hmm. But now with the interest rates being so high, you have more and more houses coming on the market, but a lot of people cannot afford to pay
to do anything,
to pay the 7% interest. Mm-hmm. And then people are, hesitant to buy because they don't know, with all the uncertainty, with the economy, with tariffs, with people losing their jobs, the federal government is probably one of the larger employers in this area. So why am I going to move at this point in time when I don't know if I'm going to have a job? So I'm just going to sort of stay put to sort of see exactly where things sort of shake out. Mm-hmm. So I think long explanation of sort of explaining to you sort of like this is what's going on in the housing market right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they said they caught between a rock and a hard place.
That's exactly, I think, my 10-minute explanation you just mm-hmm. you just explained in 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm. And because why? You know what I mean? But they don't have a job. The whole purpose of them moving here was to work for the federal government.
Yeah.
And that's what's impacted the market, because all you said and the rationale behind it is because these people moved here away from their homes.
Yeah.
To work for the federal government, and now they don't have a job, Mm-hmm. Some companies out here that are nice enough to hire some of these people, But
Well,
what do you do?
well, I will tell you that Governor Moore in his administration, you know, there have been some initiatives throughout the states and with some of the counties to try to hire and attract some of the people, because some of the people who have been furloughed or who have been fired from the federal government are very talented people. And, you know, so there has been an effort to sort of hire some of those folks, you know, by the state. And then, you know, some private industries have like sort of stepped in as well, because, you know, some of these people are scientists, you know, they have like
Years of experience,
yeah.
expertise. They're experts in their field,
Yeah.
you know. And then some of the agencies are very important because they were, you know, looking out for us for all these diseases like measles.
Yeah.
Has hit this country and the world at an astounding rate, you know, and that we haven't seen in years. Okay.
Yeah,
and
you know, but it's primarily hitting areas where people are unvaccinated. Like there was an area down in Texas, and I think there was another area down south, and you know, some people have objections to, you know, the vaccinations and things of that nature, which is, you know, their prerogative. They don't want to do the vaccinations. You know, I mean, maybe they just don't believe in it, or they think that it's going to cause more harm than good.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's sort of their choice, but
but if you know your child has measles, then you should not be taking them, or you should not be going to Vietnam, gone past the immunization time period.
Yeah.
Going through the airports, getting on airplanes, going to the grocery stores, where you are infecting massive numbers. It's just like a weapon.
Well, there are people who cannot take the vaccinations. And, you know, they call it like the herd immunity. Yeah. So those people are basically immunized by when 90% of the folks are, you know, it sort of protects them. But, you know, that sort of breaks down when you have, you know, those people who are just, I'm not getting immunization, which is, you know.
I mean, yeah, it's a prerogative,
it's their prerogative.
But take on the responsibility that if you have it or your children have it, do not infect other folks that have the same idea that you have, that did not get vaccinated. But now you got, across the country, you got an enormous amount of people that have, you know, the measles.
And I just want to say, I believe in vaccinations.
I believe in vaccinations too.
I've been vaccinated. My children have been vaccinated.
Yes, me too.
My family's been vaccinated.
Me too.
So yeah, I believe in vaccinations.
And real quick, because one thing in this area, you had to have vaccination. If you had to go to nursery school, all the way up to high school, all the way up to college. Even when you went to college, you had to get vaccinated for a certain vaccine, whatever it was. When I went to college,
when we were in the military, you know, it was mandatory vaccinations. Yeah. Basically, we were standing in line, and you know, they came through with the vaccination guns, and boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
You know, because we're in such close quarters with each other. So yeah.
So I mean, and then like I said, in this area in school system, they made sure the parents had the kids vaccinated. You know, but with that, so that we won't miss our wave. Okay. Thank you for coming, and let's give these people a nice wave, and y'all take care, and thank you so much for joining us.
Invite me and pass along this good information. So.
And we appreciate the what you say, and we appreciate you.